Okay, let's talk about Homeschool Algebra 2. And if you're watching this video, I'm going to assume that you are a homeschooler, and that is excellent. Actually, I have the greatest respect for homeschoolers and homeschooling. But what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to give those of you out there that are homeschool parents some information, some things that you need to know when you're looking at Homeschooling Algebra 2. And actually, I'm going to do this by answering these three questions. And the first is, what is Algebra 2? So most of you out there probably know or have a good sense of what Algebra 2 is, but I'm going to give you some more information on why this course is so important for your child to do well in. I'm also going to be talking about, should you take Algebra 2 before or after Algebra 1 or after geometry? That's another kind of common question that a lot of parents have. I'm going to speak to that as well. I'm also going to talk about what grade should students take Algebra 2. So what is the kind of like the appropriate grade and age level? So I'll speak to that. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about the most important factors for student success in mathematics and in, of course, Algebra 2. So we're going to cover these three questions. But before we do, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is John. I'm the founder of TabletClass Math. I'm also a middle and high school math teacher. I've been teaching math for decades, and over those years, I've constructed full, complete homeschool math curriculum for pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, and pre-calculus, because this is where my expertise and experience is in middle and high school mathematics. Now, if you are homeschooling or been homeschooling for a while, most of you out there are pretty comfortable with elementary math because you're probably pretty good with basic mathematics, but as you get into this more advanced math, middle school and especially high school, this is where you definitely need to get some assistance from a math teacher or a strong curriculum program. So I'm going to leave a link to my homeschool program in the description of this video. You can check out all my courses and of course, if you're new to my YouTube channel, I literally have 1,000+ math videos that you can check out to see if you like my teaching style. But without further ado, let's get into these questions. And the first question, again, is what is Algebra 2? Well, basically, Algebra 2 is just a continuing of what your child started learning, starting in a pre-algebra, actually. So algebra is like one big course. So you start with pre-algebra, and then you continue on with algebra 1, and then you continue on with algebra 2. And also you kind of continue on in pre-calculus, but we'll kind of table that here for a second. So think of pre-algebra, algebra 1, and algebra 2 is one big algebra course. Now, when a student takes algebra 1, effectively what they're going to be doing is reviewing everything they learned in pre-algebra and then learning some new material. In algebra 2, it's no different. Basically, students are going to cover and review pretty much everything they learned in Algebra 1 and then build upon that with more additional advanced topics. So the key to doing well in Algebra 2 is doing well in Algebra 1, and the key to doing well in Algebra 1 is to do well in pre-algebra. So if your child has struggled in any one of these particular courses, that's just going to get kind of more amplified when they take Algebra 2. So it's really important that you try to find a program that's going to work. Obviously, you're doing your research, probably looking into things, and I'll talk about some factors that you want to be looking into when you pick a curriculum. But Algebra 2 is also equivalent to a college course called like college algebra. They're pretty much the same thing for the most part. When students go to college and are kind of taking like the minimum level requirement for mathematics, it's generally like a college algebra course. Sometimes it's called something different, but effectively it's the same, pretty much the same or equivalent to high school algebra 2. So if your child intends to go to college but not major in anything technical, they're probably going to see this material again in the form of a college algebra course, unless they can kind of what they call CLEP out of. And if you're not familiar with the CLEP exam, I actually have a CLEP college algebra course. Effectively, you can take this test if you're strong enough in Algebra 2 to get full credit for college algebra in most colleges and universities. So Algebra 2, again, super important course that, in fact, again, you could probably if your child does well enough, probably get CLEP credits to take care of this college algebra credit. So very, very important course. Again, take a look at how well they've done in their previous algebra courses. And if they struggled, if your child is struggling in Algebra 1 and is taking Algebra 2, you really kind of want to be ready or prepared to, really have them spend more time in the course or to have maybe supplemental material, ready to support them because Algebra 2 is going to be quite, much more advanced than Algebra 1. You kind of think of it like this. Here's Pre-Algebra, here's Algebra 1, and here's Algebra 2 in terms it's kind of a little visual aid in terms of how advanced things are. So again, mathematics is cumulative. And another thing you can do to get your child ready for Algebra 2 is to have them review what they learned in Algebra 1 over the summer, or maybe even start taking Algebra 2 early, okay? So this doesn't answer maybe the question directly, what is Algebra 2? But again, pretty much all the topics that they've covered in Algebra 1, they're going to see again. Let me just highlight a few of those topics here and show you some things that are going to be new to your child in Algebra 2 versus Algebra 1. So Algebra 1, your child learns a lot big thing that you learn in Algebra 1, kind of speaking here just off the cuff a little bit, is how to solve all different sorts of equations. And this continues on in Algebra 2. Okay, and they're going to start learning even more advanced equations like logarithmic equations, exponential equations, really get into matrices and how to solve equations involving matrices. So just more sophisticated level of solving equations, which would include higher order, what we call polynomial equations. And all of this right here, guess what, is going to show up in a pre-calculus course. Okay, so more advanced mathematics. All this stuff is cumulative, and if your child continues on learning mathematics, they're going to see all this material again in the future. So that's why it's so important that you don't get rid of any notes or even kind of like all the tests and quizzes that your child has done. That way you have a record of their strengths and weaknesses. And if you can take care or improve their weaknesses, they're going to just do much better as they progress in mathematics. So again, Algebra 2, super critical course. And now let's talk about the question. And I was going to answer it in the previous point, but I'm going to answer it here. Should you take Algebra 1 and then Geometry, then Algebra 2, or Algebra 1, Algebra 2, then Geometry? So let's just talk about when you should take Algebra 2. So let's start here at the 8th grade. Now, in middle school, what's typical, by the way, this is always there's always exceptions to this track, but this is the most common track, and this is the track I want to recommend for all of you out there, unless you have some sort of extenuating circumstance. So pre-algebra should be taken at the end of middle school, so that would be the 8th grade. The 9th grade, most students should be in an Algebra 1 course, and of course that leaves us in 10th grade. And the question is, should you continue on with Algebra 2 and then Geometry, or do Geometry and then Algebra 2? So I'm going to tell you right now, unequivocally, it's always better to take Geometry after Algebra 1. There are exceptions, of course, to any rules, but this should be the track for most students. And I'll tell you the reasons why. So there's basically 3 reasons why you want to take Geometry before you take Algebra 2. So of course, Algebra 2 would be at the 11th grade year. So right here in the 11th grade, for most students, if they intend to go to college, they're going to have to start dealing with the SAT and ACT test, okay? So the SAT and ACT test are about 50-50 or maybe 60-40, a little bit skewed, heavier on the algebra side, but your child's going to have to know a lot of geometry, have completed geometry to do well in the SAT and ACT. There's a lot of geometry, again, on these exams, and if they're taking geometry in the 11th grade year, they may not have learned everything that they needed to have learned to be successful on these tests. That's why you have to get these courses done in the 9th and 10th grade. Okay, so because the SAT and ACT, the bulk of what's going to be on there is going to be Algebra 1 and Geometry. So you want to get that completed at the 10th grade so they're fully prepared to start taking the SAT and ACT in the 11th grade year. So that's the first reason why you want to take Algebra 2 after geometry. Now, another reason is if your child takes Algebra 2 after Algebra 1, all they've been doing for 3 years, they've been doing pre-algebra, Algebra 1, Algebra 2. It's a lot of algebra, so it's over and over and over again. They're kind of seeing the same thing, and it kind of tends to burn students out. Geometry is a completely different course, and it's got a kind of nice break from the algebra. And of course, they're going to revisit Algebra 2 after geometry. Okay, now again, this is where most students most students should follow this particular track. And then the third reason is if your child is continuing on with mathematics, let's say pre-calculus as a senior, if they've taken Algebra 2 after geometry, this is a nice setup for pre-calculus because a lot of the concepts in Algebra 2 are going to be taught again in pre-calculus, and this will still be fresh, in their memory, if you will, if they roll right into a pre-calculus course. So those are three reasons why you want to take Algebra 2 at the 11th grade year. And of course, that should be, students between, say, 15 and 17 years old. Okay. And I would say for the most part, this will be the minimum requirement for high school mathematics. If your child is definitely not going to college, then you may not need to take pre-calculus, but if your child is definitely going to college, then I would strongly encourage a pre-calculus course at the 12th grade year, or maybe a statistics course. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about our third question here, and that is, what is the most important factors for student success in mathematics and and Algebra 2, but in fact, this is just for anything, and it comes down to the teacher. Okay, who is going to be your child's teacher? But we need teachers, and the reason why is that you just wouldn't give your child an Algebra 2 textbook and you say, read this, and you will have completed Algebra 2. Right? It doesn't work that way. What a teacher does is basically translates the information from a textbook or a program, and they're an interpreter, if you will. And what a teacher, through their experience, is going to be able to emphasize what's the most important thing that your child needs to really kind of get, most important skills that your child needs to learn at the Algebra 2 level. Because if you look at any kind of math book, generally they're very huge textbooks, and I'm going to tell you right now, teachers do not cover 100% of a textbook. Okay, they probably cover anywhere between, say, 80 to maybe 90%, and they emphasize the most important things. Okay, so if you're working with a textbook or a program, everything, of course, is important, but at the Algebra 2 level, there's certain skills that your student really, really has to, establish for them to be successful in mathematics. And the book isn't going to tell you that. Only a teacher, through a lot of professional, years of teaching mathematics, can really emphasize those things. Also, stuff like common mistakes where students tend to make errors, other strategies to solve problems. This comes from experience. So whatever whatever program you're looking at, you want to evaluate who is going to be the teacher. Just don't focus on the material. Now, when it comes to a teacher qualification at the Algebra 2 level, basically, for most, say, uh, public schools and very good private schools, most teachers to teach Algebra 2 have to have a certain certification for that, generally need to have a degree in mathematics, okay, or math education. For myself, I actually have a degree in mathematics plus a master's of science and educational technology. So you want a highly qualified teacher in terms of their formal education, but that's not what makes a great teacher. Okay, it's a combination of formal education plus experience. So we're talking about teachers who've actually taught students, and so when you get an experienced teacher, they'll generally speaking, they're going to develop a certain teaching style that they can relate to students. Okay, they'll be able to teach in a way that students will like and understand. So that's what you're looking for. You're looking for a very, experienced teacher, and I'm talking about not just the credentials, how many years of actual classroom experience. It does count. Okay. Now, the second thing I would talk about in terms of factors for success is the instruction. Okay, so you can have a great teacher, but how much instruction is your child getting from that teacher? So I'm talking about, let's say, lessons, okay? So lesson videos, for examples. If you choose a program where the lesson videos are like, say, 3 to 5 minutes, well, that's just not enough instruction at this level. So think about what most students are going to be getting in a top public high school or private school. Generally speaking, they're going to spend an hour a day with their math teacher, and 30 minutes of that time, okay, more or less, is going to be instruction. The teacher's going to be up there teaching for like 30 minutes. They're not going to give a 3 to 5 minute little, tutorial lesson. They're going to give high quality, very comprehensive lessons and instruction, and then they're going to spend the next 30 minutes generally doing guided practice, doing a lot of different examples. So this is what you want to be looking for in terms of whatever program um, that you're going to be selecting, is that not only do you have a great teacher, but there is a lot of instruction for your child to be watching and taking notes from, because the material and concepts at the Algebra 2 level are quite complex. So a little quick tutorial video isn't going to be enough. And that brings me to my last factor, and that would be practice. Okay, so how many practice problem examples does the program you're looking at have? So there's, again, if there's only like 2 or 3 examples of how to solve particular problems, that's generally not enough when you're doing, like, let's say 20 homework problems, and but you only have 2 or 3 examples to go by. You want to see a lot of variety in terms of demonstrated, actually solved problems, so your student can watch, or your child can watch and learn. So in my particular program, I have all these qualities, and it's taken me years and years to build my courses. So I offer very, very comprehensive math instruction, and every single problem, we call them example sets, I go over 100%. So every single problem is solved by video instruction. And as I'm solving these problems, I'm emphasizing things from the lesson, and I'm talking about different strategies, common mistakes. That's how you really have a rich kind of learning environment. Okay, so again, these are the qualities that you want to be looking at in any program, whether it's my program. These are the things that you want to be, the factors that are going to be really important for a student to be successful at the Algebra 2 level. Now, one thing that unfortunately happens quite frequently, especially in homeschooling, is students take a curriculum, they like the curriculum, and the parent likes the curriculum, and they're like, "Oh no, I like this. It's it feels good. We really enjoy it." But here's the thing: it may not be rigorous enough. Okay, so you might do well in a program that's really not challenging your child enough. So you want to make sure you have a real rigorous curriculum. And the last thing I'm going to mention here, and this is a really important um, factor. Maybe if this is the last thing, or if the only thing you remember from this video, and that is this: make sure you have an opportunity to try a curriculum. It doesn't have to be a complete, full, free trial, if you will, but see enough samples from the curriculum that you're looking at. Or considering using for homeschooling. Okay, test it out. You test it out. You really do your research. Have your child look at all the samples and previews and whatnot. So make sure you try before you buy. That's our motto. Hey, try things out. Really make sure you understand what you're getting yourself into, because once you buy into a curriculum, that's one thing. You're making a financial commitment in terms of a program, but even more importantly, you're going to be spending time with this particular curriculum. And as the school year starts, the worst thing that can happen is that figured out that you chose the wrong program. That does happen, and you can overcome that scenario, but it's always best, obviously, to try to do your research up front and try things out and really, really be have a high level of conviction before you buy and actually commit through the academic year, with the particular program. So, anyways, hopefully, all this information will help you out when you select a Algebra 2 program for your homeschooler. Whether you use my program or another program, because there's other good programs out there. Um, The best thing for you, though, as the homeschooling parent, is to get as much knowledge and information as possible. Okay, that's the kind of the additional responsibility you have as a homeschooler because you do have to, evaluate, what program should I use? It's a big question, and the only way to answer that question is to get a lot of information and do your research in advance. And hopefully, this video helped you out with that respect. Again, if you're interested and want to check out my homeschool math courses, again, obviously I do teach Algebra 2, and all my courses have been out there for many, many years with, I like to believe, an excellent track record. So you could check out all my courses again by following the link in this description, but the description of this video. But with that being said, I definitely wish you all the best in your homeschooling adventures. Thank you for your time and have a great day.